other thing, too, that's a bit of a challenge is people think they know their credit scores. There's probably 100.
Credit Karma. I did Credit Karma.
Yep.
Right. Well, and I read once there's about 100 different models for credit scores, and they're all different for insurance and credit cards and bank loans and things like that. So even Experian has a proprietary model for consumers that they sell them, which is not what we wind up with.
Yep.
So that's probably another big
So
misconception.
if I'm a first-time home buyer and I, quote, know my credit score, and I'm thinking, oh, I have a 620, is that good enough? Because what do I really know, right?
Right. You really don't know, but we can fix a lot of things, and oftentimes it doesn't take much. For instance, I had a person one time when we were doing an MHFA loan, and they needed a 640, and they had put their social security number wrong into the application. We got their pay stubs and realized that we had already pulled the credit report. And so we had to just rerun the credit report. All the information was the same, except that there were two small charge cards with balances. One was like $30 and the other one was $15 or whatever. And he had in the interim paid them both off. And that dropped his score below what was required for the program.
Yep.
Which you wouldn't think. You would think that that would be a good thing. It's very counterintuitive. So we had to have him. We can go into the credit company and say, what if we did this? What if we did that? He had to go charge a cup of coffee to get his score back up that other 20 points. And the amount of effort it took to get the right documentation for that cup of coffee so the credit bureau would rapidly rescore that fella, it was ridiculous. But that's just how just such a small thing can make a big difference. So even if they come in with a 720 credit score, oftentimes we can do an analysis and pop them up quite a bit with very small tweaks.
So the number is really only a small piece of the pie.
Very.
The puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the large pieces of the pie, but there's so many, once again, qualifying factors.
Sure.
Right. And so the 620 credit score, like you were saying before, coming in, what if you're at 620 and we're doing a program for a first-time home buyer, for example, that needs that down payment assistance?
Yes.
And let's say to qualify for it, we're at that minimum at that 620. Really for like Mahafa, like we were talking about, like 640, 650. Minnesota Housing. Sorry, I said Mahafa. I apologize. Probably abbreviate a little bit better. But if you're at that, let's just say you had your credit score pulled already and that's what it was at, we want to make sure you're at least there and you maintain it. Like Cindy was saying, if you fall out of it, that's not going to help anybody. Right?
Yeah, that's a big problem.
When we see your credit report, we can kind of give you a heads up. And what we do is if you're at a point where you're at that border, we want to make sure you know, like, you probably want to stay at least at these credit levels. This is how much you want to keep on your card. And like you were saying, one of the biggest, I want to say myths would be everyone thinks that you need to pay off your credit cards and your credit score is going to boost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, but this is a recent development we've seen just a couple of times here in the recent past where people have paid off their car and their charge cards and their credit scores disappear. This is something brand new. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
People with fresher credit.
Yep.
Oh.
So you need to have activity.
You need to carry a little bit of debt.
Right.
just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And the other thing, as long as we're on the subject of credit, is people will oftentimes want to clean up old collection accounts and things like that.
Yes.
Well, the score is going to be based on the last 2 years' activity, most heavily. So if you had a fight with Comcast 5 years ago and you owe them a couple $100, if you go and pay that, now it's bad new credit.
Oh boy.
So, there's just weird things like that. And that's
Resurrecting it.
Yeah. It's so important for us to
Wow.
see people early because those kind of things really, really can make a difference.
So in terms of the score, because I'm sure you hear this as I've been around realtors for many years now, what's the perfect score or what's the score I need to qualify or anything like that? Is there a magic number where you're talking first-time home buyer? If I have A score, is it worse or better than B score? You know what I mean? Is there that pretty magic number?
Yeah. I actually love that conversation.
Do ya?
So for us, like I just had it in the office this morning at Fairway and we were just talking to everybody and we were like, what is a perfect score for us?
Yeah.
And if you're in the upper 600s, that's a good starting point is how we feel because that's where you're going to be hitting the minimum requirements for like a conventional mortgage.
Okay.
But also, a perfect score to someone is so much different than another person. So like for us to say, hey, you should wait till you be at like a 660, right? A 660 for you versus someone else could take years.
Sure.
You know, and so does it make sense for us to tell you, hey, you need to be at this credit score so you can buy a home? Because then really like if you need to be in a home for what reasons it may be, if you want to invest, if you want to be in a home and you need to support your family, you need to do all these things where you can't rent, for example, then let's have that conversation. And Cindy and I are going to help you find where you're at, because that's the part of what we love, what we do at our jobs is, why are you buying the home? Because then it's like, all right, so what's the credit score that we need to get to make that happen?
And too, with the automated underwriting systems, everything comes into play. You know, income, your debt to income ratios, are you getting a gift? Do you have any money in the bank after closing? So even though the credit score is important, there's so many other things that will go into that automated underwriting.
Sure.
So, you know, if you have very little money and your job is sketchy and you have a 720 credit score, well, we still have to get all the rest of that to fit into the guidelines.
Okay.
So
we're busting up some myths here. So there's really no perfect score. It's kind of based on every unique person.
Yes.
Right.
Loan officers are not just there to tell you no or yes. They're your friend, your confidant, your guide.
Exactly.
Okay.
100%.
Just as much as your realtor, helping you get to where you need to go.
Right.
I think it's great that you guys touched on, you're going to help their credit scores. You're going to help them, guide them to better credit and give them advice on what they should do or not do. Because to what you both said, some of those things I would think, well, yeah, I want to pay it off. Might be detrimental.
It's not common sense. A lot of the things that we talk about have no common sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, the common sense part's hard because this is stuff that they don't teach you in school.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. And like we were talking about before with like the perfect credit score, right? It's hard, you know, because we're going to try to help you once again. Like we're going to do products. I know like we do like what if simulator, Wayfinder, and we're going to pay for products to help you be in a spot to succeed.